You are able to see my screen, right?
Yes, Srini. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So today I'll start intercompany or AGIS. Can anybody tell what is intercompany? Any idea on intercompany? Okay. PK, can you tell me?
Is it?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. It's the intercompany transaction means the transaction inside the organization only. Nothing to pay or receive from the outside.
Okay, within organization, right?
Also, it could be different legal entities.
Yeah. So can it be across legal entity and and across ledger?
No, these. So intercompany are basically different legal entities, right? We cannot.
Yeah, different legal entity. But can it be within ledger or it can be across ledger also?
It can be within one ledger. We can accommodate different legal entities in one ledger as per the rules, like all the 4C should be the same.
Yeah. So yeah, it can be within legal entity or across legal entity. Sorry, across ledger also. Like within legal entity with same ledger or within legal entity with different ledger. So intercompany Oracle will allow to create intercompany transactions between two legal entity. They can be belongs to same ledger or it can be different ledger. Okay. So in intercompany, what happens? Advanced global intercompany systems or AGIS. For example, I have one organization.
Sorry, what is AGIS? Could you please?
Advanced global intercompany system.
Thank you.
Because you have one big organizations and we have operation in US, operation in UK. And for US one, we have one legal entity. US one legal entity. And we have US one business unit. And ledger, US primary ledger. UK also we have UK legal entity. And UK business unit. And we have UK ledger. Now our requirement. We have some requirement to create intercompany transactions between these two legal entities. And our ledger also is different. So for this, one will be a provider and one entity will be a receiver. For example, this is the business term in Oracle, like one is provider entity and another is receiver entity. Okay. Provider entity will sell. It's the supplier. And provider entity will generate AP invoice to the receiver entity. Receiver entity means who is purchasing and provider entity is the seller. The buyer. Okay, so this is the fundamental of AGIS. One is buyer, one is seller. But here the trading partners, they are our internal organizations. They are not external party. That's why it's called intercompany transactions. So there are some setups we have to do. to achieve this intercompany transactions. So there are two kind of intercompany transactions. Either you can create intercompany transactions with invoicing or without invoicing. So transaction, it can be with subledger invoicing. And another is without invoicing. Okay. So invoicing with subledger with AP and AR invoice. This is without AP and AR invoice. That is based on requirement. Whenever you are gathering the requirement, the client will take, like, we have frequent intercompany transactions and we do it within our internal organizations. So you can ask these questions, whether you are generating invoices for this, like for provider, with the seller means we have to have a AR invoice, right? Or for buyer, AP invoice. Sorry, seller will be your AP invoice and buyer will be the AR invoice. So two kind of invoice we have to generate. Like if US is selling, right? That means you will send the customer the AR invoice, and with the supplier we need to send the AP invoice. Supplier will send the AP invoice. So here we have options to, we can create intercompany transactions. Just for recording purpose within GL, we can confine these transactions so that no AR and AP invoice will be generated. Or you can also do the setups where we have to do entire AP and AR setups and link all these setups to our intercompany setups so that AP and AR transactions will be created invoices. So let us see how we can create.
Is the order, sorry, the orders also get created or just the invoicing part?
Invoicing part, only invoicing.
So intercompany transactions only have AP and AR invoices and not orders?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not orders. This is for our recording purpose.
Oh, this is in subledgers, you mean? Sorry, Srini,
Subledger.
I
Yeah.
joined a little late. Okay.
Yeah.
So in the previous company I worked for, they actually set up this intercompanies as business partners, like customers and suppliers.
Yeah. That is required.
Okay.
There is another intercompany organization that is called inter-org transfer or
Yeah,
in inventory
between
level.
warehouses.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the
Inventory.
inventory exchange, right?
Yeah. That is different in SCM, that is available. But in that case, there will be inter-org transfer. There are different in inventory transactions. But in this case, it's purely a purchase and sale transaction. We have to create a journal entry in GL, and that will be reflected in subledger.
Can you give an example of what kind of transactions these are in general, like in a company? If
Like
not
in company,
for,
yeah. For example, this is your legal entity. This is dealing with some particular service, suppose consulting service, and this UK
Okay.
entity, this is in some two different service. Okay, but for this UK, you need some software or other consulting service that will from US entity. Okay, so that service they will not acquire from outside, as our US legal entity is dealing with that service or product. So you can directly purchase this from US. Our enterprise will same. For example, Tata. In Tata, we have different business sectors, right? We have TCS, and TCS we have Tata Motors also is another organizations or
So this
another entity.
happens at legal entity level, the transfers.
Yeah, within legal entity, but across ledger. Ledger can be different, no problem.
Okay.
So
within legal entity, you are saying, not
no,
across legal entity.
across legal entity, across legal entity.
Oh, okay.
That will be.
Yeah.
Within legal entity, that is called intra-company, not inter-company.
Yeah.
That is simple.
Okay.
Yeah, that is you can create manual transactions, and this AGI is not required. Intercompany means we have two separate identity, separate statutory entity between this entity. Example,
Okay.
TCS.
Let's say we are creating an invoice in UK entity. And you select the invoice type as intercompany. What happens?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
What
So it is
happens?
just transactions or
accounting
just
line.
journals? I think it's just journals, right, Srini?
No,
You're
it will
creating
create
it.
invoices, separate invoices. I'll show you complete flow, how it work.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
So there can be common example like certain services you are procuring products. You can from your organization within your company. Like some consulting service, TCS is dealing with your software service, right? And for example, Tata Motors, they need to install some software or some consulting. So why they will go to other company like Infosys to get that service? They can go to TCS, right? So if they are within the same organizations, so they can create AGIS transactions. Like TCS will be the provider and Tata Motors will be the receiver, like that. So there can be many different kind of expenses, like regular expenditures within entity, across entity. First of all, you have to set up all your basic ledger setup. Okay, that is we have to do in your GL setup, legal entity setup. Then, as we are doing the intercompany transactions, so this legal entity we have to designate or assign as a intercompany organization. Okay, so that means US1 legal entity will be a intercompany organizations. We have to define this. And US2 also will be another intercompany organization. So let me go to system. Okay. So you have to navigate to setup and maintenance. And under setup and maintenance, you have intercompany. Navigate to intercompany. So just its required setup is showing, just convert it to all tax. Okay. Then we have intercompany organizations. Click on manage intercompany organizations, and each legal entity for which you are going to create intercompany transactions, it should be defined as a organizations. That means every legal entity, for example, US1 legal entity you are going to use, right? This one. So you have to create US1 organizations, define it as a organization name, give one organization name, just US1 intercompany organizations, link it to your legal entity, and also link it to your business unit. So this is not mandatory if you are not going to use the subledger invoicing. This is optional. This business unit you can link or you don't link. If you have to link if it is mandatory. If you are going to opt for subledger invoicing, then you have to give one AR business unit and AP business unit. So that is mandatory. So similarly for UK also you have to create. So each and every legal entity for which you are going to create intercompany transactions. So just create them as a intercompany org. Just you have to give organization name, legal entity name. Means you have to assign that legal entity, and then you have to give your receivable view and payable view. That is the first setup. Then we have system option setup, intercompany system option. In system option, actually, you have to provide some important informations. How we are going to create the numbering of your transactions intercompany. When you are going to create any intercompany transactions, how it should be system generated or manual. So usually you are preferable is to get it system generated. So select system generated. And what is your currency? Which currency you are going to use when creating the transactions? What is your conversion rate? Means if your currency is different, right? You are dealing with two different ledger. If it is UK, you have currency is GBP. If it is US currency is USD. So in this case, you need a exchange rate because our currency is different. So you have to give a different default exchange rate. Which exchange rate we are going to use for intercompany transactions? Then intercompany calendar. Intercompany calendar is nothing. You can either use the ledger calendar, you can create a separate calendar. Okay. So it is always better to use just send calendar. So that you can leverage the calendar, like whatever ledger calendar we can use. But in some companies, they need a different intercompany calendar. So here the problem is, if the calendar is same, so you have to dependent on the period close, like all the period you have to close. First, you have to close the intercompany period. Then you can able to close the GL period. As the you are using the same calendar. So this GL closure is dependent on your intercompany closure. So this criteria and this we need to consider what is the business requirement. But if it is calendar is different, then your GL closure is not dependent on your intercompany period closure. So you can use the same calendar. Then your transaction type.
Sorry, Srini, if the calendar is different, then closing the period could be difficult, right?
Well, intercompany period you can close, right? Without any problem. It is not dependent on your GL closure.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so like because all the intercompany transaction you are going to transfer to GL ultimately. Okay, so you are going to transfer to GL. So if some transactions are pending or you are facing difficulties in closing the period, GL period also you cannot close. So that criteria you need to consider whether you want to use. So most 99% we are using the same calendar, like GL calendar. So then we have transaction type. Transaction type means your nature of transactions, whether it's a for which what is the purpose you are creating these transactions, intercompany transactions. So like in AR,
Invoice,
you have,
credit memo.
yeah, it
That
can
or-
be, yeah, different kind of expenditures or fees, charges. What is the purpose? Any consulting service. So based on your requirement, you can create your intercompany transaction types. And it is very important because based on your transaction types, certain uh, setups are dependent. Let me show you. So this is your system option setup. Then we have transaction type. Intercompany transaction type. If you see, there are a lot of like you are doing any adjustment within intercompany, within entity or any kind of service, sales service, okay, or shared service, food service, adjustment you are doing. You can see invoicing. Invoicing means for this transaction type, are you going to generate AP and AR invoice? If you click enable this checkbox, that means this is mandatory. It's mandatory that we have to do all the APR setups and related setups. Otherwise, you cannot able to create intercompany transactions. If you disable this, so this transactions, it's no need to create any invoicing. So within GL and intercompany organizations, the transaction will be created and posted to GL. So there is no link will be created between your subledgers. This is important. The transaction types very frequently these interviewer will ask how you will determine if these intercompany transactions are creating any invoice or not. So this is determined by your transaction types. Second thing, approval. Whether all your intercompany transaction you need approval. So some organization they need approval, some organization they don't need. So accordingly, as per requirement, you can enable. If it is require approval, you have to do all the BPM approval setups. Then conversion rate type, this is not mandatory. Descriptive flexibility, like you are transferring your transactions to intercompany, like subledger, whether you are going to import the descriptive flexible informations, you can enable or disable. So this transaction type you have to enable so that you can able to use. Then intercompany period status. Okay. Means even if you are using the same calendar, you have to open the intercompany period separately. Okay, like you are using opening the AR period, AP periods. So GL periods. Similarly, you have to open the intercompany period to before creating any transactions. So that is you can navigate to manage intercompany period status. Here intercompany period you have to open based on your transaction types. That means for each transaction types, you have to open the period. If you have 10 transaction types, for each transaction types, you have to open the periods. That means first you have to select your transaction type. For example, IC sales. I'm using this. So you can go to IT like sales, and if you your period, which period you want to open. I want to open 2024. Okay. This is for June period. I want to already I have opened the May period. Okay. So this is June period. Such. So it is never opened, right? So just select it and open. So like this, you have to, for each transaction type, you have to open the period. So before opening the period, if you see, you will not able to get the period. For example, IC addition. This is another transaction type. Okay. So status, for example, I want to open all the never open period for 2024. So these are never opened, right? So you can just select which period you want to open and open. Okay. So before that, it is appearing because before opening any period, you have to go to action and copy GL period. If you don't copy, then period will not be copied to your intercompany transaction type and no period will be visible here. As I have copied all the GL period here to your intercompany transaction types, I'm able to see all the period, corresponding periods, like whatever our GL calendar period, it will be copied here. Let me check, like for any transaction type, it is not copied. So that, yeah, it's already for almost all the transaction type period are copied. Yeah. So if you are not able to find for the first time, if you are going to open the period, just come here, go to action and copy GL periods. Then you can open the period. Okay. Or we are using subledger invoicing. So that means all the basic setups of AR and AP. We have to complete. Okay. We already discussed, right? Like here, what setups are required for AR and AP, right? So transaction process, because to create a transaction, so whether it's automatic or manual, AP and AR transactions, these are the setups we have to complete. AP and AR setups. Once you complete these setups, then next thing is here US legal entity is the provider, right? It can be a provider or it can be a receiver also. That means if provider means it's selling something. So if it is selling, it should be defined as a customer, right? Define your legal entity or assign customer and supplier.
And they'll all be employees.
Not employee. Assign customer supplier to your legal entity. Why required? Because you are creating subledger invoicing. For subledger invoicing, if one is selling, it's a like buyer, suppliers, right? And if one
Correct.
is purchasing, it's a customer.
Correct. But actually, they are employees of employees because this is between the companies. The customer and supplier will be the employees of the company, isn't it?
Yeah, employee means here they are organizations, not employee. Our
Oh,
UK,
you're setting.
yeah,
Okay.
UK legal entity means it's an entity.
So basically,
Entity
it's
is
like
the
a
customer itself.
Yeah, but this entity, yeah, customer can be entity or it can be individual, right? In this case,
Oh, okay.
here
It
it's
can be
a
a company
entity.
or
Yeah.
But supplier cannot be company, right? Supplier is.
Well, yeah, supplier can
Which
be,
is-
you are purchasing from company also, right? Like supplier means it's a
Okay,
company
okay.
or it
No,
can be
no.
individual.
True. Sorry. Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So set up
Can be
like
a
business
company.
partners, Srini?
Yeah, setup.
Do these intercompany have to be set up within the business partners? Like
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have to go through the
Yeah.
business partner setup?
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
how we can do that? This is intercompany period status. Then here supplier assignment, customer and supplier assignment. This is intercompany customer supplier association. So ours is UK legal entity and US legal entity, right? That means US can sell or buy. UK also can sell or buy. Sometimes they can provide, sometimes they will purchase something. That's why you have to assign one supplier and one customer and link to your legal entity. Okay. So this is the customer and this is the supplier for UK, inter UK. This is intercompany suppliers or customer. If you see here, intercompany. First, you have to create this supplier and customer, and then you can assign. This is intercompany UK, and this is intercompany US one. Similarly, for supplier also, you have to create a supplier and assign here. Because without this, you cannot create intercompany invoicing. Okay. This is one setup. Then receivable assignment.
So we are still going through the AR setups. Sorry, I missed the starting.
No.
So
No. This is intercompany setup.
all intercompany setups. Okay.
Yeah, intercompany. From intercompany, we'll see how we can create AR and AP invoice. So we are discussing the AGIS setups.
Okay.
One by one. Yeah. So receivable transaction assignment.
Sorry.
But
Is it another module in itself? AGIS?
yeah, you can well, it's a sub module.
Okay.
Yeah. Intercompany receivable assignment. Here, you have to tell your system for this particular transaction type. If I'm going to create AR transactions, what will be my transaction type in AR? And what will be my memo lines in AR? Because when the system will generate AR invoice from AGIS, it will look for some basic attributes. So that attributes you have to provide here. So like in AR, when you are creating any transactions, first you have to give a transaction source, transaction types, customers. So customer we defined, right? Like we link the legal entity to your customers. But transaction type, which transaction type the system will use? So here, whenever we are creating any transactions with this transaction type, then this intercompany transaction types will be used and to create a AR transactions.